Imagine waking up every day feeling trapped, working tirelessly, yet never truly moving forward, never truly free. You follow the rules you were taught, you do everything right, yet somehow your bank account doesn't grow, your dreams feel distant, and your life seems to be running on autopilot. That is the reality for millions, people who live under the weight of fear, doubt, and limitation. But what if I told you that everything you've been taught about money, work, and success could be turned upside down? What if the very beliefs you hold about what is safe, what is smart, and what is enough are the chains that keep you from living a life of freedom and abundance? Right now, in this very moment, you have a choice. You can continue down the path that has been laid out for you, following the footsteps of caution, waiting for permission, letting fear dictate your moves, or you can break free. You can open your mind to a new way of thinking, a mindset that does not just survive, but thrives. You see, the world is full of people who have been conditioned to trade their time for money, to measure success by a paycheck, a title, or a piece of paper that says they are qualified. This is the thinking of poor dad, the mindset that keeps millions stuck in mediocrity, working hard but never creating wealth that lasts. But there is another path, a path illuminated by rich dad, a philosophy that teaches you how to see opportunities where others see obstacles, how to use money as a tool rather than a master, and how to build a life where you are in control, not your circumstances. This audiobook will take you on a journey into the psychology of wealth, the strategies of financial intelligence, and the mindset shifts that separate those who live paycheck to paycheck from those who create freedom, security, and legacy. It will challenge you, provoke you, and awaken something deep within you, a recognition that you are capable of more than you have allowed yourself to believe. You will discover the difference between assets and liabilities, learn how to make your money work for you, understand the power of calculated risk, and see how courage and action are the catalysts that turn knowledge into wealth. But more than that, this journey will confront your fears, expose the lies you've been told about money and success, and demand that you take responsibility for your financial destiny. By the end of this audiobook, you will not be the same. Your thinking will expand, your mindset will shift, and you will begin to see the world not as a place of limitation, but as a place of opportunity. You will understand that wealth is not a dream reserved for a lucky few. It is a reality that can be created with the right mindset, the right knowledge, and relentless action. So listen closely, absorb every lesson, challenge every old belief, and let this be the moment where your life begins to change. From this second forward, you are stepping into a new reality, a reality where you control your future, where money becomes a tool of freedom, and where your potential is no longer defined by fear, but by the power of your own mind. Are you ready to see the world through the eyes of Rich Dad, to break free from limitation, and to take your first step toward true financial mastery? The journey starts now, and every second you invest in this knowledge will multiply in ways you cannot yet imagine. Your future is waiting. In every person's life, there comes a moment when the contrast between two mindsets becomes strikingly clear, almost unavoidable. This contrast is what shapes destinies, what separates those who struggle perpetually from those who thrive and multiply their opportunities. The first chapter of Rich Dad 5S Poor Dad dives deep into this contrast, showing us the two fathers, two worlds, two philosophies that can determine the trajectory of your life. From the very beginning, the story is not just about money, it's about perspective, mindset, and the way you choose to approach challenges, opportunities, and learning itself. The two fathers, one rich and one poor, were influential figures in the life of a young mind, each offering lessons that were powerful, though entirely different. The poor dad, often seen as the traditional path, believed in the security of a stable job, the importance of formal education, and the notion that success is measured by how well you climb the corporate ladder. He encouraged playing it safe, avoiding risk, and focusing on incremental progress. To him, a good education meant degrees, certificates, and obedience, and a good job meant stability, benefits, and a predictable paycheck. On the surface, this seems like sound advice, and for many it is the path chosen. However, it is a path that rarely teaches the art of creating wealth or the intelligence to multiply it. In contrast, the rich dad presented a completely different philosophy. He was a man who saw money not as a destination but as a tool, a means to leverage freedom, opportunity, and power. He taught that financial literacy, the ability to understand and make money work for you, is more valuable than any degree or job title. Rich Dad's lessons were not about avoiding risk, but managing it, not about comfort, but about growth, and not about what is safe today, but what will build a sustainable tomorrow. This chapter opens the eyes of the listener to the stark differences between the two approaches and the profound effect they can have on a person's life. The first lesson that emerges is that the environment in which you are raised and the values instilled by the influential figures around you will shape your financial mindset long before you encounter real-world challenges. If you grow up in a household where security is prioritized over opportunity, you are conditioned to think small, to avoid failure, and to see wealth as something external and often unattainable. Conversely, if you are exposed to the mindset of wealth, entrepreneurship, and intelligent risk-taking, you start learning early that money is a tool, failure is a teacher, and the world is full of opportunities to be seized rather than obstacles to be feared. This chapter also emphasizes that knowledge alone is not enough. It is the application of knowledge that separates those who remain stuck from those who achieve financial freedom. Rich Dad's lessons were practical, often challenging, and designed to push boundaries. They encouraged critical thinking, questioning conventional wisdom, and making decisions that others might avoid out of fear or uncertainty. Poor Dad's lessons, while safe and structured, often left individuals unprepared for the complexities of wealth building, leaving them dependent on jobs and external validation. Moreover, this chapter delves into the importance of mindset as a foundation for all future decisions. The way you perceive money, risk, opportunity, and failure is crucial. Poor Dad's approach teaches fear of failure, avoidance of uncertainty, and reliance on a paycheck. Rich Dad's approach teaches courage, strategic thinking, and leveraging resources to create multiple streams of income. These philosophies shape not only financial outcomes, but also the confidence, resilience, and ambition of an individual. Another essential aspect explored in this chapter is the understanding of education beyond formal schooling. Rich Dad challenged the traditional concept of education, teaching that financial intelligence, negotiation skills, investment knowledge, and entrepreneurial thinking are as important, if not more, than academic degrees. The first chapter demonstrates through vivid examples how these lessons manifest in real life. While Poor Dad may advise, go to school, get good grades, find a stable job, Rich Dad would say, learn how money works, invest wisely, understand assets and liabilities, and make your money work for you. The contrast is stark and the implications are life-changing. The chapter drives home the realization that your financial future is not determined by luck or circumstance alone, but by the lessons you internalize and the mindset you adopt. It encourages listeners to reflect on their own upbringing, the influences they've absorbed, and the thought patterns that govern their approach to money and success. By analyzing these two worlds, listeners are empowered to choose consciously which philosophy they will embrace. Will they accept the comfort of a predictable life with limited financial growth? Or will they adopt the mindset that seeks opportunity, embraces learning, and builds wealth strategically? The chapter also highlights that it is never too late to shift from one mindset to another. The lessons of Rich Dad are accessible to anyone willing to learn, unlearn, and relearn. It is about making a deliberate choice to step away from fear, conformity, and limitation and stepping into empowerment, strategic thinking, and possibility. By the end of this chapter, the audience understands that wealth is not just about money, it is about mindset. The narrative sets the stage for the rest of the book by laying the foundation for understanding the crucial differences between thinking like the poor dad, who relies on safety, and the rich dad, who relies on knowledge, strategy, and action. Listeners are left with the realization that their future depends not on their environment alone, but on how they interpret, internalize, and act upon the lessons that life and the people around them provide. This first chapter is more than a comparison. It is a call to awaken the mind, to challenge inherited beliefs, and to actively choose the philosophy that will lead to freedom, opportunity, and a life built on intelligence and courage rather than fear and limitation. It plants the seed that will grow through the subsequent chapters, preparing the audience to embrace the principles of financial independence, critical thinking, and proactive wealth building. By highlighting the contrasts in approach, values, and mindset between Rich Dad and Poor Dad, this chapter serves as a mirror, a wake-up call, and a roadmap. It encourages reflection, inspires action, and challenges the listener to question what they have been taught and what they are teaching themselves. In essence, the first chapter is the awakening of perspective, the moment when the listener begins to see that the difference between mediocrity and wealth, limitation and freedom lies not in luck or opportunity alone, but in the way they think, the lessons they embrace, and the philosophy they choose to live by. It's an introduction not just to money, but to life, mindset, and the power of conscious choice. Life has a way of teaching lessons far beyond the walls of a classroom, and the second chapter of Rich Dad 5's Poor Dad dives into one of the most critical truths about success. Money and financial intelligence are not learned through standard education alone. The chapter emphasizes that while schools teach how to be good employees, they rarely teach how to make money work for you or how to understand the language of wealth. Poor Dad, like many in society, strongly believed in formal education as the ultimate tool for success. He encouraged studying hard, getting good grades, and securing a reliable job, ASU. Ring that security comes from a paycheck, health benefits, and job stability. On the surface, this seems reasonable, and for many, it is the conventional path. Yet, this chapter highlights that the traditional approach often leaves people financially vulnerable because it focuses on earning money by trading time rather than creating wealth through intelligent decisions. Rich Dad, however, taught that the real lessons in life often come from experiences, observation, and a willingness to question the norms. He emphasized that financial education, which includes understanding assets, liabilities, investments, and the difference between working for money and having money work for you, is far more valuable than merely learning how to perform well in a standardized environment. This chapter demonstrates through stories and real-life examples how these two approaches shape the future of an individual. Poor Dad's teachings may make someone competent, reliable, and respected in their job, but it does not guarantee financial independence or security. Rich Dad's philosophy, on the other hand, equips a person with the mindset and skills to identify opportunities, assess risk, and create multiple streams of income, ultimately fostering self-reliance and freedom. One of the key lessons in this chapter is understanding that financial intelligence is not innate, it is learned, practiced, and applied. Rich Dad often said that the most valuable asset a person can have is their ability to learn about money, how it works, and how it can be leveraged to generate more wealth. This requires curiosity, observation, and the courage to challenge conventional wisdom. Poor Dad's approach, rooted in traditional schooling, often discourages questioning authority or taking unconventional paths. Students are taught to follow the rules, obey instructions, and conform to expectations. While this can lead to stability, it can also create a mindset that is risk-averse, dependent, and limited in vision. The chapter explains that many people spend their lives trapped in cycles of working harder, earning more, yet never achieving true financial freedom because they were never taught to make money work for them. Rich Dad, in contrast, encouraged embracing failure as a learning tool, seeking opportunities others might ignore, and understanding that financial mistakes are stepping stones rather than setbacks. Another important point in this chapter is the idea that school teaches how to think but rarely teaches how to make money think. Rich Dad's lessons revolved around critical thinking applied to financial decisions, investments, entrepreneurship, and identifying gaps in the market. He wanted students to understand that money is a tool, and like any tool, its effectiveness depends on how well you use it. Poor Dad's mindset treats money as a goal to be earned and spent, while Rich Dad's mindset treats money as a resource to be leveraged, multiplied, and grown. The chapter also emphasizes the role of self-education in building financial intelligence. Books, mentors, real-life experiences, and observation of successful people become invaluable teachers when one chooses to step outside the conventional learning framework. Rich Dad often reminded that schools prepare students to earn a living, not to create a life of wealth. Understanding this distinction is critical because it forms the foundation upon which financial freedom is built. In addition, this chapter explores the idea that financial mistakes are often treated differently by Rich Dad and Poor Dad. Poor Dad tends to see mistakes as failures to avoid, leading to fear and hesitation. Rich Dad, however, sees mistakes as lessons, as feedback, as guidance for the next decision. This perspective encourages calculate, risk-taking, innovation, and resilience. The chapter also draws attention to the value of observing money in motion. Rich Dad would take young minds to businesses, investments, and real-world scenarios, teaching them to see how wealth is created, maintained, and multiplied. Poor Dad, in contrast, emphasizes theoretical knowledge, numbers on a report card, and abstract concepts, without showing how these translate into tangible financial success. The contrast demonstrates why financial education outside the traditional classroom is essential. Another critical lesson in this chapter is understanding the difference between earning a salary and building wealth. Poor Dad believes that hard work guarantees financial security, while Rich Dad teaches that, without understanding assets, liabilities, and cash flow, hard work alone will never lead to freedom. Money must be understood as a system, as a tool to be applied strategically. This requires learning, observation, and application, lessons that schools rarely provide. Throughout the chapter, the narrative encourages the listener to reflect on their own life, the lessons they have been taught, and the gaps in their understanding of money. It challenges the conventional belief that academic excellence alone leads to success and urges embracing a mindset that seeks knowledge in areas that truly matter for financial independence. The chapter also instills a sense of urgency. It reminds the listener that the world is changing rapidly, that opportunities are abundant for those who understand money, and that waiting for security through traditional means may limit potential. It pushes the audience to take initiative, to educate themselves financially, and to apply the lessons of Rich Dad actively in their daily lives. By the end of this chapter, the audience understands that education is more than school, that knowledge must be applied, and that mindset dictates the results one achieves. Poor Dad's lessons provide safety, but rarely wealth. Rich Dad's lessons provide understanding, freedom, and the tools to create abundance. This realization is a turning point for the listener, a moment to decide which approach they will adopt, which philosophy will guide their decisions, and how they will define their own financial future. The second chapter is not merely a comparison, it is a revelation. It exposes the limitations of traditional education, celebrates the power of financial literacy, and inspires action. It encourages the listener to seek knowledge that matters, to embrace learning as a lifelong pursuit, and to understand that wealth is built not through compliance and fear, but through curiosity, courage, and the strategic application of knowledge. It reinforces the idea that your financial destiny is in your hands, shaped not by luck or circumstance, but by the lessons you internalize, the actions you take, and the mindset you choose to cultivate. This chapter prepares the audience for the next stage of the journey, providing clarity, inspiration, and a roadmap to start thinking differently about money, work, and opportunity. It sets the stage for the practical application of financial principles that will follow, ensuring that listeners are not only motivated, but also equipped to take control of their financial future. The third chapter of Rich Dad 5's Poor Dad takes the lessons from understanding mindsets and education and moves into the arena of financial intelligence, revealing why this skill is the true differentiator between wealth and struggle. While the first two chapters set the stage by contrasting the philosophies of Rich Dad and Poor Dad and emphasizing the importance of learning beyond traditional schooling, this chapter dives into the mechanics of money, the strategies for making it work for you, and the mindset required to master it. Financial intelligence is not merely about knowing numbers or tracking expenses, it is about understanding how money flows, how it is created, and how it can be leveraged to generate further wealth. Poor Dad sees money as a finite resource, something to be earned through effort and preserved through frugality. He teaches caution, avoidance of risk, and dependence on the security of a job and a predictable paycheck. In his view, financial growth is linear. Work hard, earn more, save diligently, and hope that life doesn't present unexpected challenges. This approach, while seemingly prudent, limits one's ability to create wealth at scale. It fosters a mindset of scarcity, fear, and reliance, where the individual's income is tightly bound to their hours worked and their ability to follow rules. Rich Dad, on the other hand, treats money as a tool, as a system, and as something to be understood and directed intentionally. He teaches that financial intelligence is the ability to see opportunities, understand assets and liabilities, and make informed decisions that allow money to generate more money. Unlike Poor Dad, Rich Dad emphasizes the importance of making money work for you, instead of being enslaved by the need to work for money. In this chapter, the lessons begin by breaking down the concept of assets versus liabilities. Poor Dad often equates possessions with wealth, a big house, a luxury car, or a prestigious title. He believes that earning and spending are the markers of success. Rich Dad challenges this notion, teaching that true assets are items that put money into your pocket, while liabilities are things that take money out. Understanding this difference is foundational to financial intelligence because it transforms the way one approaches spending, saving, and investing. The chapter uses examples and real-life scenarios to demonstrate how people can unknowingly accumulate liabilities while believing they are building wealth. A mortgage on a large home, high-interest credit cards, and lifestyle inflation are all pitfalls that trap many in the Poor Dad cycle. Rich Dad, however, encourages focusing on acquiring true assets, like businesses, investments, real estate that generates positive cash flow, intellectual property, and other ventures that grow in value over time and produce income independently of the individual's labor. Another critical component of this chapter is the understanding of cash flow and the importance of having money move in a way that works for you. Poor Dad's teachings revolve around earning a salary, paying bills, and saving what little is left. Rich Dad focuses on creating streams of income that continue to flow, even when one is not actively working. He teaches that wealth is built not by what you earn, but by how money is deployed, multiplied, and leveraged. The chapter emphasizes that the mindset of the rich involves thinking in terms of systems, investments, and opportunities, whereas the mindset of the poor revolves around security, compliance, and limitation. A person with financial intelligence learns to identify gaps in the market, risks that can be managed, and investments that can yield substantial returns. They do not fear failure. They analyze it, learn from it, and use it as a tool to grow. This chapter also delves into the concept of learning from experience rather than solely from instruction. Rich Dad's lessons often involved taking action in the real world, observing how businesses operate, how investments generate income, and how economies shift. This hands-on approach contrasts sharply with Poor Dad's reliance on theoretical knowledge, standardized exams, and classroom learning, which rarely provide the insights necessary for our wealth creation. Furthermore, this chapter examines the role of mindset in making financial decisions. Poor Dad is cautious, often paralyzed by the fear of losing money or making a mistake. Rich Dad, however, teaches that risk is not something to avoid, but something to understand, manage, and leverage. Financial intelligence involves analyzing potential outcomes, mitigating risk, and taking informed action. The difference in mindset explains why some people remain trapped in a cycle of earning and spending while others grow their wealth exponentially. The chapter also addresses the importance of continuous learning. Rich Dad instilled the idea that financial intelligence is a lifelong pursuit, requiring curiosity, adaptability, and the willingness to challenge conventional wisdom. The world of money is constantly changing. New opportunities, technologies, and investment vehicles emerge regularly. Those who are financially intelligent remain vigilant, observant, and ready to act on opportunities, while others remain constrained by outdated beliefs and fear. Another key lesson is understanding how taxes and debt can be leveraged or avoided. Poor Dad often views taxes and debt as burdens to be endured, teaching compliance and avoidance. Rich Dad, however, teaches the strategic use of debt and understanding tax systems to benefit financial growth. Debt, when used correctly, can become a tool for investment rather than a trap. Similarly, understanding the tax system and legal frameworks allows one to retain and reinvest more wealth, multiplying financial potential. Throughout the chapter, the narrative emphasizes that financial intelligence is not about luck, inheritance, or connections alone. It is a skill, a mindset, and a disciplined practice. Anyone willing to learn, observe, take action, and reflect can develop this intelligence. Poor Dad's teachings may produce stability, but Rich Dad's teachings produce freedom, opportunity, and the ability to shape one's financial destiny. By the end of this chapter, the audience is equipped with a clear understanding that money is not just a tool for survival, but a system to be mastered. It challenges the listener to look at their own financial habits, beliefs, and mindset, urging them to shift from working for money to having money work for them. It prepares them to move beyond fear and scarcity into a mindset of opportunity, strategy, and proactive wealth creation. The third chapter is pivotal because it transforms the way one views money from a limited resource to a powerful instrument. It sets the stage for applying practical principles, understanding investments, and building the foundation for lasting wealth. Through this chapter, the audience gains clarity, insight, and motivation to take control of their financial future, bridging the gap between knowledge and application, fear and action, and limitation and abundance. It instills a sense of empowerment, showing that financial intelligence is attainable for anyone who commits to learning, observing, and applying the lessons consistently. By internalizing the teachings of Rich Dad and rejecting limiting beliefs of Poor Dad, the listener begins to see the path toward financial freedom, independence, and a life defined not by circumstances, but by strategic choices and intelligent action. The fourth chapter of Rich Dad 5S, Poor Dad, dives into one of the most critical and transformative concepts of financial education, understanding assets versus liabilities and building a blueprint for true wealth. This chapter takes the listener deep into the mechanics of money, illustrating how the choices one makes about possessions, investments, and expenditures can either create financial freedom or perpetuate a cycle of dependency. At its core, the chapter explains that the rich think differently about what they own and how it serves them financially. Poor Dad, representing the conventional mindset, often measures success by what is visible: a big house, an expensive car, designer clothes, and other status symbols. He equates having these things with being wealthy, believing that earning more allows for bigger purchases, which in turn signifies prosperity. However, this perspective is misleading because it fails to distinguish between assets, which generate income, and liabilities, which drain it. Rich Dad's philosophy is a radical departure from this approach. He teaches that true wealth is not demonstrated by the things you own, but by how those things contribute to your financial growth. An asset is anything that puts money in your pocket, consistently and reliably. This could be a rental property generating monthly cash flow, a business that earns profits without requiring constant supervision, stocks and bonds that provide dividends, or intellectual property that yields royalties. Liabilities, on the other hand, take money out of your pocket. They may appear valuable or luxurious, but they do not contribute to wealth. A large home with high mortgage payments, a luxury car with maintenance costs, or a credit-fueled lifestyle may give the illusion of success, but they create financial strain and dependency. The chapter emphasizes that the failure to understand this distinction is the single biggest reason most people remain trapped in financial struggle. Many work tirelessly, earn well, and yet live paycheck to paycheck, accumulating liabilities while believing they are building wealth. Rich Dad's lessons challenge this mindset by teaching individuals to think strategically about every financial decision. The chapter explains that financial literacy is incomplete without understanding the flow of money. Poor Dad focuses on income statements, salaries, and what comes in monthly, often ignoring the outflows that drain resources. Rich Dad focuses on cash flow, the difference between money coming in and going out, and how to maximize the positive flow through smart asset acquisition. The chapter also addresses the concept of financial discipline. Building assets requires restraint, patience, and strategic thinking. It often means delaying gratification, resisting the urge to spend on liabilities, and investing in opportunities that grow over time. Poor Dad's philosophy encourages immediate reward, consumption, and living within a paycheck, which may provide comfort in the short term but hinders long-term wealth accumulation. Rich Dad, however, stresses that wealth is not a result of luck or high earnings alone, but of consistently choosing to acquire and develop assets that generate ongoing income. Another essential point in this chapter is understanding that not all debts are bad and not all assets are obvious. Poor Dad tends to view debt purely as a burden and may avoid it entirely, believing that financial security comes from saving and working hard. Rich Dad teaches that debt can be leveraged strategically when used to acquire income-generating assets. For example, taking a loan to invest in a rental property that produces positive cash flow can accelerate wealth creation. Similarly, not all assets are physical or tangible. Knowledge, skills, and intellectual property are some of the most powerful forms of wealth. The chapter provides examples of people who have leveraged their expertise, creativity, and skills into businesses, investments, or passive income streams that continue to grow independently of their labor. The chapter also explores the psychological barriers that prevent people from building assets. Fear, ignorance, and social pressure often push individuals to liabilities that signal status rather than security. Poor Dad's mindset instills caution, risk aversion, and conformity, making people hesitant to invest or create opportunities that might seem uncertain or unconventional. Rich Dad, however, teaches that calculated risk-taking, informed decision-making, and a willingness to learn from mistakes are essential to accumulating assets. This mindset shift is pivotal because it transforms fear into opportunity, limitation into possibility, and dependency into independence. Throughout the chapter, the narrative encourages the listener to take a hard look at their own financial life. It asks them to analyze what they own, how it contributes to their wealth, and whether their purchases and investments are building freedom or creating chains. By providing practical examples, case studies, and relatable scenarios, the chapter makes the abstract concepts of assets and liabilities tangible and actionable. Additionally, this chapter emphasizes that acquiring assets is not merely a financial decision, but a lifestyle and mindset change. Rich Dad teaches that wealth building requires education, persistence, and the courage to go against the societal norms that glorify consumption over creation. It is about seeing opportunities where others see obstacles, understanding the rules of money, and applying knowledge consistently over time. The chapter also stresses the power of reinvestment. Assets generate income, but to build lasting wealth, the income produced must be used strategically to acquire more assets. This creates a compounding effect where financial growth accelerates over time, producing freedom and independence. Poor Dad's approach, in contrast, often leads to spending additional income on liabilities, perpetuating a cycle of financial struggle regardless of earnings. By the end of this chapter, the listener gains clarity on one of the most fundamental principles of financial success, the difference between what adds to your wealth and what diminishes it. They understand that true riches are not measured by possessions or status symbols, but by the ability to generate income through assets that work for them. This chapter transforms the way individuals perceive money, consumption, and opportunity, encouraging them to adopt a strategic, intelligent, and disciplined approach to building wealth. It sets the foundation for the next stages of the journey, where financial decisions, investments, and mindset shifts are further explored. The listener is left motivated, enlightened, and ready to challenge old beliefs, replacing them with the actionable principles that distinguish the rich from the poor. By internalizing the lessons of Rich Dad and avoiding the pitfalls illustrated by Poor Dad, the audience is empowered to take control of their financial future, focusing on what truly matters: acquiring and growing assets, minimizing liabilities, and creating a life of freedom, choice, and abundance. This chapter is more than financial advice. It is a blueprint for transforming one's relationship with money and unlocking the doors to long-term success. The fifth chapter of Rich Dad versus Poor Dad delves into one of the most powerful yet often misunderstood aspects of wealth building: the relationship between fear, risk, and the courage to take action. It is in this chapter that the stark contrast between the mindset of Poor Dad and Rich Dad becomes most evident, because it is not just knowledge or strategy that separates the wealthy from the rest. It is the ability to confront fear, take calculated risks, and act decisively. Poor Dad represents the conventional path, a mindset built on caution, compliance, and security. He teaches that money is scarce, that failure is dangerous, and that the safest route is to follow rules, avoid mistakes, and rely on a steady paycheck. This approach creates a fear-based relationship with money, where every financial decision is weighed against the risk of loss rather than the potential for growth. Poor Dad's philosophy often leads to stagnation, limiting potential and creating dependency on external systems and authorities. People who adopt this mindset are often trapped in a cycle of earning and spending, avoiding investment opportunities, and fearing the unknown. In contrast, Rich Dad teaches that fear is a natural part of financial growth, but it should never dictate action. He believes that financial success requires courage, the courage to step into uncertainty, to make informed decisions despite potential risks, and to learn from every outcome. Rich Dad reframes failure as feedback, a tool for learning, and a stepping stone to mastery. This chapter emphasizes that the most common reason people fail financially is not lack of intelligence or opportunity, but the inability to manage fear and embrace calculated risk. The narrative explains that the fear of losing money often prevents individuals from investing, starting a business, or pursuing opportunities that could significantly improve their financial situation. Poor Dad encourages avoidance and safety, while Rich Dad encourages assessment, strategy, and action. Another critical lesson in this chapter is understanding the difference between risk and ignorance. Poor Dad equates risk with danger and discourages taking chances. Rich Dad, however, teaches that true risk comes from not knowing what you are doing. When someone is financially educated, understands the market, studies investments, and develops a strategic plan, risk is managed, not eliminated. Calculated risk is an essential component of wealth building because it allows one to move forward while minimizing potential loss. The chapter also explores the emotional aspect of financial decision-making. Fear, doubt, and insecurity can cloud judgment, leading to hesitation, missed opportunities, and financial regret. Rich Dad emphasizes the importance of developing mental resilience and emotional intelligence in handling money. Understanding how emotions influence decisions enables individuals to act logically and strategically rather than reactively. This mindset is what separates those who take control of their financial destiny from those who remain passive and reactive to circumstances. In addition, the chapter illustrates how the willingness to take risks opens doors to opportunities that others overlook. Poor Dad teaches conformity in the status quo, making it difficult for individuals to see or seize unique prospects. Rich Dad, in contrast, encourages observation, creativity, and action. By stepping into uncomfortable situations and embracing challenges, individuals learn, grow, and uncover opportunities that compound over time. The narrative provides vivid examples of how entrepreneurs, investors, and self-made millionaires consistently embraced calculated risk while others shied away, demonstrating that fear can be transformed into a powerful motivator rather than a bar. Raya. Another crucial aspect discussed in this chapter is the idea of preparation and knowledge as antidotes to fear. Poor Dad often views fear as a reason to avoid investment or innovation. Rich Dad teaches that fear can be mitigated through learning, planning, and practice. By understanding the systems, studying trends, and simulating scenarios, individuals can reduce uncertainty and increase confidence. The chapter emphasizes that financial courage is not reckless, it is deliberate and informed. Moreover, the chapter highlights the importance of action over perfection. Poor Dad waits for the right time, the guaranteed safety net, or the minimal risk scenario, which often never arrives. Rich Dad teaches that waiting indefinitely leads to missed opportunities. The courage to act, even when conditions are not perfect, is what propels wealth creation. By taking small, calculated steps, learning from experience and adjusting along the way, individuals gradually build confidence, skill, and financial momentum. The chapter also touches on the social pressures that reinforce fear. Poor Dad's advice is often shaped by societal norms, peer expectations, and conventional thinking. Many people avoid risk because they fear judgment or failure in the eyes of others. Rich Dad teaches independence of thought and the importance of developing a personal financial philosophy free from external pressures. By focusing on long-term goals rather than short-term approval, individuals gain the freedom to make bold, strategic decisions. Additionally, this chapter explores the mindset of leveraging fear as fuel. Rich Dad teaches that fear can be converted into energy, determination, and motivation. When individuals recognize their fear, confront it, and use it as a guide rather than a barrier, they develop resilience and confidence. This mindset enables them to take actions that are uncomfortable in the short term, but highly rewarding in the long term. The chapter emphasizes that wealth is rarely created in comfort zones. Poor Dad's comfort-oriented mindset leads to stability but limits growth. Rich Dad's philosophy requires stepping into discomfort, embracing challenges, and using courage and knowledge to navigate uncertainty. This approach not only creates financial opportunities, but also fosters personal growth, confidence, and independence. By the end of this chapter, the audience is guided to reflect on their own relationship with fear and risk. They are challenged to identify areas where fear has limited their financial potential and to begin cultivating the mindset of calculated courage. They are reminded that financial freedom is not a product of luck, inheritance, or mere hard work. It is the outcome of informed decisions, strategic risk-taking, and the ability to act decisively despite fear. The fifth chapter instills a powerful lesson: the difference between those who remain constrained by financial limitations and those who achieve wealth is often their willingness to embrace risk intelligently. It provides motivation, practical insight, and psychological tools to transform fear into a strategic advantage. Listeners are encouraged to move beyond hesitation, develop knowledge, and act with courage, knowing that failure is temporary, risk is manageable, and opportunity rewards the brave. By internalizing these lessons, individuals are prepared to take control of their financial lives, creating a path toward independence, abundance, and success that is not dictated by fear or societal norms, but by informed, courageous action. The sixth chapter of Rich Dad versus Poor Dad focuses on the mindset that multiplies money, a concept that separates those who struggle financially from those who create lasting wealth. While the previous chapters explored financial literacy, assets versus liabilities, and the courage to take risks, this chapter emphasizes the power of thinking like the rich, seeing opportunities where others see obstacles, and developing habits that amplify income and financial freedom. Poor Dad represents the conventional mindset that limits potential. He believes that working harder, earning more, and following the rules will eventually lead to financial security. His approach relies on effort and time, trading hours for money, and avoiding financial risks. While this approach provides short-term stability, it rarely produces wealth. Poor Dad views wealth as an endpoint, a number to reach or a status symbol to achieve, rather than a mindset to cultivate and grow over a lifetime. Rich Dad, however, teaches that wealth is a product of thought, perspective, and disciplined action. The rich understand that money is a tool and that the mind is the most powerful asset in acquiring and multiplying it. This mindset involves seeing beyond immediate circumstances, thinking in terms of systems, and constantly seeking ways to create and leverage opportunities. One of the central lessons in this chapter is that the rich focus on acquiring knowledge and developing skills that have exponential potential. Poor Dad emphasizes formal education and credentials, which may limit earning potential to a fixed salary or predictable career path. Rich Dad encourages learning about investments, business systems, entrepreneurship, and the mechanisms of money itself. The emphasis is on practical knowledge that can be applied to grow wealth rather than theoretical knowledge that primarily benefits employers. The chapter also examines the role of creativity, why, and vision in multiplying money. Poor Dad tends to follow established rules and conventional paths, believing that adherence and compliance are sufficient. Rich Dad teaches that wealth creation often comes from innovation, the ability to identify gaps in the market, and the courage to act on ideas that others may overlook. This mindset fosters entrepreneurial thinking, investment insight, and strategic decision-making. A crucial element highlighted in this chapter is the importance of leveraging resources. Poor Dad often believes that individual effort alone determines success, emphasizing personal labor over strategic use of assets. Rich Dad, however, teaches that multiplying money requires leveraging time, knowledge, other people's money, and systems. Understanding how to create value through leverage allows for growth that far exceeds the limits of personal effort, enabling financial freedom and independence. The chapter also explores the psychological distinction between abundance and scarcity thinking. Poor Dad operates from a mindset of scarcity, fearing loss, and focusing on what could go wrong. Rich Dad operates from a mindset of abundance, recognizing opportunities, focusing on growth, and approaching money as a system that can be expanded and multiplied. This mindset shift is essential because it determines how one approaches investments, business ventures, and financial decisions. Another significant lesson in this chapter is the practice of disciplined action. Rich Dad emphasizes that thinking like the rich is not enough. It must be coupled with consistent, intelligent, and persistent action. Acquiring assets, making investments, and creating wealth require daily habits that align with long-term goals. Poor Dad often undervalues discipline in financial matters, focusing on short-term comfort and stability instead of strategic growth. The chapter also stresses the importance of continuous learning and adaptability. Financial systems, markets, and opportunities evolve constantly. Rich Dad teaches that those who multiply money must remain vigilant, observant, and adaptable. Staying informed, studying trends, and adjusting strategies ensures that wealth continues to grow rather than stagnate. Poor Dad, in contrast, relies on outdated formulas, predictable career paths, and avoidance of change, which limits potential for growth. Another key insight of this chapter is the role of mindset in overcoming fear and indecision. Rich Dad teaches that hesitation and doubt are obstacles to multiplying money. Successful individuals act decisively, informed by knowledge and strategy, while learning from mistakes along the way. Poor Dad's mindset often fosters procrastination, avoidance of risk, and reliance on external security, which inhibits financial expansion. The chapter also examines the compounding effect of investing in knowledge, relationships, and assets. Rich Dad teaches that each investment, whether in education, business, or financial instruments, has the potential to grow exponentially over time. Poor Dad, by contrast, focuses on linear growth through salary and savings, which rarely produces the wealth required for freedom. Furthermore, the chapter emphasizes the importance of thinking long-term. Rich Dad instills the principle that multiplying money requires patience, foresight, and planning for future growth. Immediate gratification and short-term thinking, characteristic of Poor Dad, often lead to spending on liabilities rather than acquiring assets, hindering wealth accumulation. The narrative of this chapter encourages the listener to develop habits that reinforce the rich mindset, learning continuously, seeking opportunities to invest, taking calculated risks, leveraging resources, and acting with discipline. LSO stresses the importance of surrounding oneself with mentors, advisors, and communities that foster growth and financial intelligence, contrasting with the isolation or conformity often seen in Poor Dad's approach. By the end of this chapter, the audience understands that multiplying money is not about luck, inheritance, or sheer hard work alone. It is about cultivating a mindset that sees opportunities, leverages knowledge and resources, acts decisively, and commits to continuous learning and improvement. Poor Dad's lessons may offer safety, but Rich Dad's principles provide a path to independence, abundance, and strategic wealth building. This chapter is a turning point in the listener's journey, illustrating that financial freedom is achievable not by chance, but through conscious development of a mindset that identifies, creates, and multiplies opportunity. Listeners are encouraged to reflect on their current thought patterns, challenge limiting beliefs, and adopt practices that expand financial intelligence, enhance decision-making, and ultimately produce the freedom and wealth they seek. By internalizing these lessons, the audience is prepared to make smarter financial choices, embrace strategic risks, and leverage knowledge and assets to build lasting wealth, setting the stage for the final chapter, which focuses on creating a legacy and applying these principles for lifelong success. The 7th chapter of Rich Dad 5's Poor Dad brings the journey full circle, focusing on the ultimate goal of financial education, creating a legacy and applying the lessons learned from Rich Dad to achieve lifelong wealth, freedom, and purpose. While the earlier chapters explored mindset, financial intelligence, risk, and assets, this chapter emphasizes the importance of thinking beyond oneself, using knowledge to impact future generations, and leaving a lasting mark. Poor Dad often views life and money in immediate transactional terms. He teaches that the goal is to earn a salary, provide for your family, and maintain security. His approach emphasizes the present over the future, survival over growth, and consumption over creation. While this approach may ensure short-term stability, it rarely produces generational wealth or long-term impact. Rich Dad, however, encourages thinking strategically, with a vision that spans decades. Wealth is not just a personal achievement, it is a tool to empower, influence, and create opportunities for others. This mindset emphasizes that the principles of financial literacy, courage, and strategic action are not merely for accumulating money, they are for building systems, businesses, and resources that endure, multiply, and benefit future generations. One of the central themes in this chapter is understanding that financial freedom is inseparable from purpose and vision. Poor Dad often focuses narrowly on money itself as the goal, equating success with earnings, status, or material possessions. Rich Dad teaches that money is a means to an end. It is a tool to achieve freedom, pursue passions, invest in opportunities, and impact lives. The rich understand that the accumulation of wealth is not the ultimate objective. The ultimate objective is what wealth allows them to do: freedom to innovate, the ability to invest in others, and the power to create lasting change. The chapter explores how building a legacy requires strategic thinking and deliberate action. While Poor Dad emphasizes routine and stability, Rich Dad stresses entrepreneurship, investment, and financial intelligence as vehicles for creating systems that generate continuous value. Legacy is built not through consumption, but through creation, creating assets, businesses, and opportunities that endure beyond a single lifetime. Another critical lesson is the role of mentorship and teaching in perpetuating wealth. Rich Dad understands that knowledge alone is insufficient unless it is shared, applied, and expanded upon. Teaching others about financial intelligence, investment, and strategy multiplies impact. Poor Dad's mindset tends to withhold these lessons, focusing instead on self-preservation, limiting opportunity, and following conventional paths. By contrast, Rich Dad encourages sharing knowledge, building teams, and cultivating a culture of financial education that ensures the principles of wealth creation are passed down and amplified. The chapter also addresses the importance of vision and goal setting in creating a legacy. Poor Dad often lives reactively, focused on immediate needs and short-term solutions. Rich Dad teaches that long-term vision is essential for building wealth and security that outlasts a single generation. Setting clear, ambitious goals, mapping out strategies to achieve them, and committing to consistent action are foundational practices for multiplying financial impact over time. Risk and courage also play a role in this chapter. Poor Dad's fear-based mindset limits action and prevents the creation of lasting wealth. Rich Dad's lessons about calculated risk, resilience, and embracing failure are applied not just to individual growth, but to building enduring systems and opportunities. Courage becomes a critical component of legacy building because creating assets and wealth that persist requires challenging conventions, investing boldly, and taking action when others hesitate. Another focus of this chapter is the strategic use of assets to create generational impact. Rich Dad teaches that assets should not only generate income, but also be positioned to grow, create employment, provide education, and empower communities. This perspective transforms financial thinking from a personal pursuit into a societal contribution, demonstrating that wealth has the power to influence lives positively when managed intelligently. The chapter also emphasizes the mindset of continuous improvement. Rich Dad teaches that legacy is not static. It requires ongoing learning, adaptation, and refinement. Markets evolve, opportunities shift, and knowledge expands, meaning that those who wish to create lasting impact must remain vigilant, informed, and proactive. Poor Dad's mindset, in contrast, tends to resist change, cling to the familiar, and avoid experimentation, limiting potential for growth and influence. Moreover, this chapter delves into the psychological aspect of legacy building. Rich Dad teaches that true wealth extends beyond finances. It includes confidence, independence, resilience, and the ability to influence others. By cultivating these qualities, individuals can leave behind more than money. They leave behind principles, habits, and knowledge that shape the future success of their families and communities. The chapter also highlights the role of action over intention. Rich Dad stresses that dreaming about wealth or teaching is insufficient. Consistent, informed, and courageous action is required to turn vision into reality. Poor Dad's approach often leads to procrastination, indecision, and reliance on external security, while Rich Dad's mindset transforms ambition into measurable outcomes. Another important lesson is the integration of ethical responsibility and stewardship. Rich Dad teaches that wealth carries responsibility to manage it wisely, to invest prudently, and to create positive impact. Poor Dad's mindset often neglects this aspect, focusing on accumulation without purpose or strategic planning. By understanding that money is a tool for greater good, individuals can align personal success with meaningful contribution. By the end of this chapter, the audience is empowered to view financial education as more than a personal benefit. They understand that the principles of Rich Dad, financial intelligence, courage, strategic action, and asset building, are powerful tools for creating a lasting legacy. Listeners are challenged to reflect on their current trajectory, consider the future they want to shape, and take deliberate steps to build wealth that transcends their lifetime. The chapter leaves the audience with a sense of purpose and possibility, emphasizing that applying these lessons consistently leads to freedom, independence, and a life of impact. Listeners are encouraged to think generationally, act strategically, and embrace the mindset that multiplies money while also creating enduring value. This final chapter synthesizes the teachings of the previous chapters, illustrating that true wealth is holistic. It encompasses knowledge, mindset, courage, strategy, and vision. Poor Dad's lessons offer safety and short-term comfort, but Rich Dad's principles provide a blueprint for a lifetime of financial freedom, empowerment, and influence. By internalizing these concepts, individuals are prepared to take control of their financial destiny, create meaningful opportunities, and leave a legacy that continues to grow and inspire long after they are gone. The 7th chapter is not merely a conclusion, it is a call to action, challenging the audience to adopt the Rich Dad mindset fully. Apply the lessons with discipline and courage, and embrace the responsibility and opportunity inherent in financial mastery. It is a chapter that inspires, motivates, and equips listeners to transform their lives and the lives of those around them through knowledge, strategic action, and the relentless pursuit of growth. As we reach the end of this journey through the lessons of Rich Dad and Poor Dad, one truth becomes crystal clear. The difference between financial freedom and financial struggle is not luck, inheritance, or even how hard you work. It is the mindset you choose to adopt, the knowledge you seek, and the actions you take consistently. Many people spend their entire lives following the conventional path, trading hours for money, believing that a steady paycheck and careful savings will secure their future. This is the path of poor dad, a life constrained by fear, limitation, and the illusion of security. But there is another path, one illuminated by rich dad, where money becomes a tool, assets grow, risks are managed intelligently, and opportunities are created rather than waited for. This path is not easy, nor is it without challenge, but it offers something priceless: freedom, independence, and the ability to shape your destiny on your own terms. Every chapter of this book has shown that financial intelligence is more than numbers. It is a mindset, a discipline, and a lifelong practice. It requires curiosity, courage, and the willingness to challenge conventional thinking. It teaches that mistakes are not failures but lessons, that risk is not to be feared but understood, and that true wealth is built not on what you earn, but on what you learn, invest, and create. As you reflect on the lessons of Rich Dad, it becomes evident that building wealth is not about instant gratification or showing off possessions. It is about acquiring assets, leveraging opportunities, and developing systems that generate income independently of your time and labor. It is about thinking strategically, acting decisively, and embracing discomfort as a catalyst for growth. This is a mindset that multiplies not only money but also possibilities. The most powerful realization is that your financial destiny is in your hands. No one else can think for you, invest for you, or take the bold steps necessary to create freedom on your behalf. You must choose to learn, to act, and to persevere, even when the path seems uncertain. Rich Dad's lessons are not just advice. They are a blueprint, a map for transforming your life, reshaping your relationship with money, and creating a legacy that can extend far beyond your own lifetime. If you take nothing else from this book, understand this: fear, doubt, and conventional thinking will keep you trapped, but knowledge, courage, and action will set you free. Each decision, each investment in yourself, each risk taken with intelligence is a step toward independence and empowerment. Your journey does not end with reading these words. It begins the moment you apply them. Imagine a life where your money works for you, where you are free from financial worry, where your choices are guided by opportunity rather than obligation. This is not a dream reserved for the fortunate few. It is attainable for anyone willing to adopt the mindset, acquire the knowledge, and take the disciplined, courageous actions that Rich Dad taught. Let this be the spark that ignites your transformation. Take control of your financial future. Challenge the limits imposed by fear and convention, and step into a life defined not by what you have, but by what you create, multiply, and leave behind. Your path to financial freedom starts now, and the only question remaining is whether you will walk it boldly or remain bound by the lessons of poor dad. The choice is yours, and it is the most powerful decision you will ever make.